And you look like someone who goes into places where you don't belong.
And you sound like you go through a carton of Newports every 3 days.
You scratch my ass, I'll scratch yours.
I need to get to Addermeyer Institute.
Four years after the blockbuster Dishonored release, Arkane Studios released its sequel. After introducing many players to the freeform do-it-your-own-way gameplay of Dishonored 1, 2 pulls out all the stops and lets players go hog wild. With Harvey Smith directing the project, whatever made the first game special would be present here as well. And at the time, it really seemed like this was going to be one of those forever series. But the series has seemed to have ended since their last release was Death of the Outsider, which was an expansion that came out less than a year later. I'm reluctant to play that because most DLCs that get turned into their own games just feel empty or hollow. No, not you. You're perfect in every way. Dishonored 2 is a first-person stealth RPG released in November of 2016. If you haven't seen my review covering the first game, I highly recommend you go watch that first, simply because the titles share a lot and I don't want to retread old ground. 15 years after the assassination of Emperor Jessamine Caldwin, her daughter and current empress Emily Caldwin is hosting a ball in her honor. Emily and her father, Corvo Otano, yeah, you heard me right, get an unexpected visitor.
I present the lost sister of Jessamine Caldwin, your rightful empress, Delilah Caldwin.
Impossible.
My mother had a sister?
My dearest niece, hello.
It's not true.
My father was Emperor Euhorn Jacob Caldwin, and Jessamine was my younger sister. At the time of her death, I wasn't ready to make myself known to you, and I was forced to leave Dunwall. But now I'm home.
If you really are my mother's sister, you're welcome to stay as long as you like.
Little sparrow, blackened by bad memories, I'm here to relieve you of your crown.
Delilah, better known as Madame Anorexia, springs a coup.
Arrest Emily Caldwin and her father for the Crown Killer murder.
What?
Your sword can't still my heart.
Before actually starting to play the game, you get to choose which character you want to play as. For my first playthrough, I played on the hardest difficulty and decided to do a no-kill run with Emily. After getting knocked out and locked into a room, the game truly starts. Before I go any further, we have to cover a few things. You may have already noticed that the game looks way better. The upgrade from Unreal Engine 3 to Void Engine really shows. Polygon count, lighting effects, textures, and level complexity all benefit from the change. Unfortunately, they did have to ditch the Bob Ross art style, and at first I wasn't a fan of this. But eventually it grew on me, and either way it's a step up. They bumped up the sound quality even further this time around. With more powers at your disposal, how could they not?
You gave me no choice.
It doesn't have to be a circus. Just some little bit of excitement once in a while.
Someone left a hagfish in my jacket pocket.
Typically, I don't spoil enemies, but since they're in the first cutscene of the game, I think it's totally fair for me to talk about them. The Clockwork Soldiers, a robotic guard created by one of the assassination targets, Kieran Jindosh, is probably one of the most original and fun enemies I've ever seen in a video game. The thing that makes them stand out is that on top of the mechanical gear spinning up to move them, you'll hear Jindosh's pre-recorded messages from when they've noticed you or are going back on patrol.
It indicates the search protocol is underway. The machine is still searching. If this plays, the machine is recharging the magnetic coil.
Arkane Studios knocked it out of the park again with how well they use the music for every situation the player is in. Not only that, but Karnaca, where the game takes place, has what feels like its own theme. You'll even find citizens around the world playing the music, which is a nice little touch. I'll link the soundtrack in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. You're not in Dunwall anymore, but rather the capital of Sarkonos, the city of Karnaca. It's another coastal industrial whaling city, except with a lot more character than Dunwall. Along with whaling, the city is known for its silver mines and gang warfare. Your first time in the city, you're greeted with the hard-working whalers of Karnaca and their latest haul. The streets run red with whale blood, local vendors are gutting fish, and everything just feels like it belongs. In Dunwall, you're told it's a whaling city. In Karnaca, however, it's shown. So while you're exploring the city, be sure to explore as much as you can because it's truly lived in. The streets serve the same purpose as the ones in the first Dishonored did. They're a way of getting into your target's area. And honestly, these are the best parts of the game. Sure, some of the more individualized areas are neat, but I feel the true meat of the game is in the streets. The hub area this time around sucks. In between missions, you'll be exploring the Dreadful Whale, a small ship that's just plain boring. It has no character, no reason to explore it, and is just empty. Usually, hub areas are great places to practice a few unfamiliar moves and can fill a game with more character. The Dreadful Whale just kind of exists and suffers from the same problem as the first game's hub area did, meaning that in-game choices don't really change anything about it, and again, it's a missed opportunity. There's not even someone there who can upgrade your equipment for you. You have to find these black markets in each level, which is neat, but I think they could have gotten away with doing both. This is such a huge step backwards and honestly a letdown. What's not a letdown though is the gameplay. Most of what made the first game awesome is here as well. Corvo's powers remain the same, but they did rework Batman Vision. Instead of constantly being able to see where someone is while it's active, Dark Vision now emits a pulse and only shows enemies within its radius. It's not incredibly overpowered as the last game's Dark Vision, but it's still useful. This is the nerf it needed. You do get some new tools in your arsenal, 2 new grenade variants, and a stun mine. The real star of the show in Dishonored 2 is Emily Caldwin. She comes with her own arsenal of powers really suited towards a stealthy playstyle. The one that will get you out of the tightest of situations is Mesmerize. It can distract up to 4 enemies at a time while you pickpocket them or take them out. After they're done staring into the void, they'll forget what they were doing or who they were chasing and go back to patrol. Domino, my personal favorite, allows you to link enemies together so that if one dies or gets knocked out, they all do. Using just these two results in a really powerful combo. Emily also has her own version of Blink called Far Reach. Enemies can see you more easily with this, but it does have other uses. There's also Shadow Walk. It allows you to sneak around and take out a few enemies while staying relatively hidden. I never used it, but maybe you can find a use for it. If that's not your jam, you can use Shadow Clone Jutsu to summon some doppelgangers to do the fighting for you. I've mentioned some of the upgraded versions of powers, but I'm not going to spoil all of them. Just know that some of these get really ridiculous. In the previous game, you were given the Outsider's Mark and powers whether you wanted them or not. Here though, you can straight up deny the mark and go through the game without it.
Now, another surprise. So be it.
I wouldn't recommend it for a first playthrough, but hey, if you're a masochist, go for it. I tried doing a no powers run and I just didn't have fun, so I stopped. World exploration stays mostly the same except for the fact that the levels are absolutely massive. You can't go into every room of every building, but the rooms and buildings you can explore are worth exploring. You'll find side alleys with gang members lurking in the corners, pipes and climbables that lead to rooftops or hidden rooms, and some buildings that allow you into every room. Sure, there are some places and gates you have to go through, but how you get there is still up to you. Bone Charms got a rework as well. On top of your regular Bone Charms, you also have corrupted ones. These give you a slightly better buff, but with some kind of drawback. You can also break down Bone Charms for their traits and craft your own custom ones using a new resource. Crafting Bone Charms comes with the hazard of crafting corrupted ones, but there's an upgrade to reduce the chances of that happening. After completing the game, you're taken back to the main menu to start over or start a new game plus. Restart the game as either Emily or Corvo and run through the game game again, but with more power and what you had your first time through, keeping all the goodies you found along the way. I don't recommend playing as the other character for your New Game Plus run, mainly because in New Game Plus you have access to all the powers from both characters and you'll miss out on doing a run with a limited skill set. As I said earlier, the choices don't really matter in the game. The most substantial change you'll see is the bloodfly infestations. There are different endings in the game, but you knew that already. So New Game Plus serves as a way to easily see the alternate endings if you care enough. When starting a new game, you have your typical difficulty settings and a custom one that allows you to change different parameters, like how well enemies detect you and how hard they hit, among many others. So you really do have options when it comes to how challenging you want your experience to be. Dishonored 2 took me almost 11 hours to beat. That time could have been shorter if I hadn't been rushing and wasn't on the hardest difficulty. Granted, it can be done even faster, but you'll miss a lot of opportunities to find runes and money. For my second playthrough, I did a kill 'em all run on medium just for the bad ending. That run took me roughly 4 hours, but I wasn't being as meticulous as I could have been. Either way, the playtime here is really solid and taking your time and exploring is rewarding. On more than one occasion during my playthroughs, a character will get stuck on the environment. It's been almost 10 years since launch, so I'm not expecting them to fix this, but it's still unacceptable, mainly because it stopped progression. The story here is literally just a Disney villain showing up out of nowhere, and honestly, it's not good. I get that they needed a story to give the player motivation to do what they're doing, but it still sucks. Without spoiling anything, the many porn games on Steam probably have better plot lines than this. Like last time, a majority of the footage you've seen thus far is from my no-kill run with a few other bits sprinkled in. And again, that will stay true during the story section. Anyway, if you really don't want the story spoiled, then go to here. After picking your character, you get escorted into a room and locked in. You find your way out via a window and clear the area, neutralizing the traitorous officer of the watch in the process. Once Discount Admiral Quaritch is out of the way, you navigate your way through the streets of Dunwall and board the dreadful whale. A woman by the name of Megan Foster is waiting on you. She discovered the conspiracy and was too late to warn Emily and Corvo before Delilah made an appearance. Emily explains that she believes Delilah has something to do with the Crown Killer murders. The Crown Killer is an assassin that's been killing Emily's critics and political opponents since before the game started. Many of Dunwall's citizens believe Corvo's the Crown Killer, and with the coup underway, it's the perfect way to gain political favor from the Dunwall citizens. Emily knows Delilah had spent the last 3 years in the coastal city of Karnaca, so her and Megan head straight there. Your first task is to break into Addermeyer Institute. You see, as Megan and Sokolov were setting sail for Dunwall, the Crown Killer abducted Sokolov. Megan tracked the Crown Killer to Addermeyer Institute ran by Dr. Hypatia, but wasn't able to get in. Megan suspects that the Duke of Sarkonos, the fat guy at the beginning of the game, to be using one of Hypatia's patients as the Crown Killer. So from here you leave the dreadful whale and head for Karnaca, the capital city of Sarkonos and home of Corvo Otano. Seeing these sections makes me really miss Sam Beechworth from the first game. They try to emulate the same feeling here by starting every mission with a briefing on a boat, but god damn it, you can't beat Sam. And he died before the events of Dishonored 2.
Old Samuel made this. I'm glad he didn't live to see me driven out of Dunwall Tower.
In typical Dishonored fashion, you're dropped into an area and let loose. After exploring, you take a carriage to the Addermeyer Institute of Infectious Disease. Karnaca is suffering from a debilitating disease called bloodfly fever, an infection that either kills the host outright or turns them into keepers for protection and ultimately becomes nests themselves. Once you find Dr. Hypatia, you find out that she's gone a bit insane.
The Crown Killer, that name came from the newspapers. I'm afraid I don't... Oh yes, the murders.
You explore just a bit more and find her assistant.
Are you all right?
Dr. Hypatia did this. She's the Crown Killer. But she's not herself. She developed a serum trying to help the miners. The first version caused horrible changes to her mind. It's too late for me, but maybe you can still save her. She's a good person.
What can I do?
In my safe, in disease treatment, you'll figure out how to make the counter serum help her. The safe code is 902.
The Duke of Sarkonos has been tricking Hypatia into ingesting a false serum that turns her into the Crown Killer. You escape, make the counter serum, and cure Dr. Hypatia, who reveals to you where Sokolov's being held. If you choose not to save her, well, you know what that means. The next task is to rescue Anton Sokolov from Kirin Jindosh. I'm going to be skipping the street sections of all the levels from here on out. Just assume that every actual level starts in the streets, requiring you to do a side quest or figure out a sneaky way into a target's area. After navigating the streets, you'll find your way into the Clockwork Mansion, Kirin Jindosh's home. Jindosh is the grand inventor of Sarkonos and the father of the Clockwork Soldier. To really show how smart he sees himself and how above everyone else he believes he is, his mansion is built on the side of a cliff so as many people as possible can see it. It can't be a simple mansion either. No, it's a fuck you mansion. Pull the wrong lever and rooms move just to confuse the shit out of you. It's a really cool level and I wish there was a bit more to be explored, but either way, it's fun. You can find Sokolov being held in a maze that's walls raise and lower depending if you're standing on a button. And of course, it has a clockwork guard. You can deal with him before or after dealing with Jindosh. It's really up to you. The non-lethal way of dealing with him is to strap him into a chair and subject him to electrotherapy to make him a layman.
Who won the game? I want to watch TV.
Other than the chair, there is a more humane way to deal with him. After Jindosh is out of the picture, it's time to head back to the well with Sokolov. While asleep, you get pulled into the void again, but not by the outsider, but by Delilah. This is a huge exposition piece about how she was wronged as a child and how she should have been Empress, and I really don't give a shit. The first game had such a good setup and individual reasons for each target before and after its twist that's genuinely hard to top. And here, I don't even think they tried. Even Scooby-Doo villains had more going on. When I said Delilah is a Disney bad guy, I meant it. She's uninspired, lazily written, her plotline is in the shadow of something better, and is ultimately a waste of time as a character design. On top of that, all this exposition cannot convince me that she's Emily's aunt, because at this point, I've already mentally checked out. You could have replaced Delilah with a true menace to society, and there would have been real stakes.
Popped a perk 30, got straight to fucking.
Afterwards, you have to hunt down one of Delilah's lieutenants, Brianna Ashworth. Ashworth is working on something called the Oraculum, a machine fueled by magic to influence the Sisters of the Oracular Order, who in turn influence the Abbey of the Everyman, which is a long way of saying controlling the Overseers. Again, more Scooby-Doo bullshit. You can either take her powers away or kill her, and that's that. If you think I'm speeding past some details, you're right. The story's hollow and everything feels like it was made up along the way. Don't believe me? What if I told you there was time travel in the game? Well, there is, and the next level requires it. It's actually a really fun level if you ignore the plot reasons behind it. While navigating the mansion, you'll stumble across a room stuck in between two times. So here's something small but kind of important for the plot and a reason to play the DLCs of Dishonored 1. At the end of the Brigmore Witches DLC, Delilah, who was an antagonist, was left adrift endlessly in the void. Through the power she gained in the void, she was able to communicate to her followers and instruct them to perform a ritual that would bring her back. And for the 3 years after that, she plotted about how to take the throne. The Outsider also makes an appearance here and tells you that she stored part of her soul into a statue and must be reunited with it before she can be killed. And that's it, you just leave. Once back on the Dreadful Well, your next target is Duke Luca Abel, the Duke of Sarkonos. But there's a twist this time around. He has a body double. So in this mission, you have to deduce which one is the real Duke and which one is the double.
A friend of mine washes the linens and said the double is a smoker, if that helps.
Oh, come on. Let me take another moment here to talk about how disappointed I am with this level. This could have easily been a better version of Lady Boyle's Last Party, and it's just not. They could have made this a real challenge of finding out which of the two Dukes is the real one, but they don't do that. They tell you right away.
That the double is a smoker.
By this point, you're tired of the gameplay loop, and this would have been a nice break from sneaking around. The non-lethal way of dealing with the Duke is by talking to the double. He tells you the way the guards can tell who the real Duke is by a medallion the real Duke wears. So you steal it, knock out the real Duke, stage him on his bed, and watch him get taken out behind the shed. Or you can just kill both of them yourself. Now that all of our followers are out of the way, you can go after Delilah. Before heading into Dunwall, Megan tells you that her real name is Billy Lurk and that she was part of the team that killed Empress Jessamine Caldwin. Her being Billy Lurk is supposed to be a big reveal, but if you haven't played the DLC to Dishonored 1, this won't do anything for you. As Emily, you can either forgive her or scold her, but as Corvo, I didn't even talk to her. And I didn't even do the same for Sokolov. Once inside the Dunwall Castle, you find a strange tree growing inside of it and a non-lethal way of dealing with Delilah. You craft a cursed rune, place it on the throne, give Delilah her soul back, and fight her. After defeating her, she wakes up on the throne believing she won or some shit. I don't know how she thinks that, but whatever. She goes back into the void via a painting, seals herself off from the real world, and is obliviously living in a fantasy land. You free the character you didn't play as and the final cutscene plays. In the good ending, the body double sees to it that Sarkonos is once again prosperous and has the backing of the Abbey of the Everyman and the Sisters of the Oracular Order. Emily would go on to rule with her father by her side, Sokolov would set sail to the north to live out the rest of his days, and Billy Lurk leaves on a cliffhanger. As for the bad ending, a gang leader is left to lead Sarkonos, and Emily the Vengeful leads with Corvo at her side. Believe it or not, there's even a worse ending beyond that. If you do a kill everyone run as Corvo, he can take the throne for himself and become known as Corvo the Black. The endings are solid for what they are, and I'm not sure if they feed into Death of the Outsider, but at least they're a good payoff for your hard work. Is Dishonored 2 a good game? Yeah. It's a huge improvement from the first game and it feels like a true sequel. It keeps the essence of the first game alive even though the story's not as good. Should you give it a try? If you enjoyed the first game, then absolutely. One thing I can say though is to just ignore the story. It's not really needed and is more of a background dressing than anything. It's a shame that I have to say that, but it's not even bare bones. It's just poorly written and uninspired. I still think you should play the first Dishonored before going into this one. Dishonored 2 relies on and succeeds in its gameplay. Many of the things that made its predecessor great are amplified here and is a title I can truly recommend if you've played the first game. It's a shame that we never got a true third installment of the series, but with how the studio is being handled right now, I doubt we ever will. The best thing about this series is that if you're itching to play it, all you have to do is approach it differently and you'll get a new experience.